Hey, what's up, world? So this is Coach Kurt with the Elvis Kelly Fight Team, hanging out with Sifu Mark Medeiros. They're on the East Coast of Canada, and tonight we're going to be talking FMA-Nerdy. I know it's a Saturday night, so we'll see how this goes. But by the way, happy Saturday, everybody. So what's going on there, Mark?
What's up, Kurt? Thanks for inviting me on the show. Appreciate it, man.
Word. Glad to have you here. So I keep things pretty loose on this podcast as much as I can. Tonight, I mean, we're just going to be kind of shooting the shit, more or less, talking about the fight game and dealing with FMA and combatives and how, like, the overlap, because you made a very interesting statement on a previous podcast on another show about how a very entry-level combat sports athlete could make a FMA athlete have some issues very quickly. Or, I mean, I'm missing the phrase here, but can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a few of us out here have witnessed it. You know, there's like there's art, and then there's the combat aspect of things, right? And people who are kind of like baptized into the combat aspect of things, who are competing, whether it be in boxing, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, karate, even, like, it doesn't matter. When you're in that kind of context, that kind of a ring or platform, you're going to be looking for very, very quick and high percentage techniques, because the stakes are higher, right? Whereas with Filipino martial arts, and not just Filipino martial arts, like even traditional weapons arts, like with bow staffs and stuff like that, they have really, really good dexterity with the weapon. They have good with the weapon, but they don't have the ballistic feedback of actually hitting some. Like, I mean, people hit tires, but the tire doesn't move, right? But so when you're learning it's like throwing a punch on a bag and then trying to throw a punch at somebody who's moving. If you don't have your footwork and balance and position to be able to throw a punch, then it's not gonna be powerful. So I think somebody who comes from an experience where they're learning how to throw power and move around, they're going to transfer their abilities much quicker than somebody who's more of just doing stick drills and not actually fighting with the stick.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the issue of, as much as sparring is sparring, and fighting is fighting, there are some, like, nuances in there that really make things distinctively different, because point sparring is very different than full contact sparring. I mean, that alone is a huge distinction because of risk, impact, speed, and also just the overall, like, the intensity. Now, part of the argument we run into within the FMA community is this issue about full contact stick fighting. But the question is, what is full contact stick fighting, and what does it really entail?
Well, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but, like, full contact stick fighting is, same as full contact kickboxing, same as full contact boxing. I'm looking to hit you, and if I can stop you by doing so, then I'll do so. However, even in boxing, there's no punching the back of the head. There's no elbowing the back of the head. So if you're doing a full contact stick match and your helmet falls off, you're not going to swing their head with the stick, but you can punch them in the face. But essentially it's full contact. You're fighting. You're fighting to win. I know there's still rules of engagement, but essentially you're fighting to win. So I think it has to be that realistic. It has to be as clear cut as every other combat sport, because otherwise it's not the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, we don't play boxing. We just don't. I mean, that is an old rule just cross sport, but that's the same with combat sports in general. But with FMA and stick fighting, there's an element of play in there, because when you're doing stick tag, basically, especially with the little foam sticks, yeah, it can run into just a game of tag. Now, I mean, you can knock a dude out with a foam stick, and that's clearly feasible. But there's like that shift in changing your mind when, as soon as you step into the ring or the cage, with this full intensity of like, I'm going to get knocked out, I couldn't knock a guy out. There's a big shift between that and the stick fighting aspect, because especially when you're dealing with like the point sparring, rapid hitting, is there that like real risk of actually getting knocked out, or like that feeling? Because I can imagine with Dog Brothers. I've never fought Dog Brothers, but I have observed and seen for many years, like there is some real risk of injury there. So that the level of intensity, just by credo, is already there.
100%, and I think that's why those guys fight at the level that they do. Like even the PSYOP guys, because the risk is so great. I mean, like some of these guys not even wearing gloves.
Yeah,
I mean, I had a sparring with no glove on because I forgot to put it on, and my finger broke. You know, at the time I didn't feel it because of the adrenaline. So like, but these guys willingly do this. You know, I think these guys are important because they are the ones who are willing to risk it all for the truth. You know, it takes a lot of confidence in your skill to do that. But that being said, you know, like you can get your arm broken blocking a kick. You know what I mean? So there's always risk in combat sports, but that stick, it's an accelerator, and it magnifies certain things, man.
Yep.
So
well, it's funny because you made this comment on another podcast about like this entry level full contact fighter can upset a stick fighter very easily. And this is very much kind of like, it reminds me of the stories that my dad told me back in the 70s and the 80s, when you had the open karate tournaments, especially like the Ed Parker tournaments there in Long Beach. And what he was telling me about is, back in the day, they had low-level like journeyman boxers who would come in, learn a couple of punches and kicks, particular to the rule set, and just dominate the scene. And this is when there was a split off between the Taekwondo crowd and everybody else, where they basically said no more punching to the head because they were so frustrated with that dominance. And I wonder if FMA actually could go that way, or if it already is going that way. Because fighting is contingent upon the rule sets, but when we're talking about actual fighting, there's universal principles. So it's a matter of like, are we talking about competition or just collaboration? So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think from what I've personally seen, well, first, yes, say the boxers coming in and smashing those guys is because they are coming in with a different set of skills. I think they have better timing because they're sparring more. See, like that's the whole thing about like the Holy Trinity, you know, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and boxing. There's a constant spar. There's constantly rolling. So they're constantly pressure testing, and they're developing their timing and their execution of their techniques way more than I think some traditional FMA people are. I think a lot of FMA people are, you know, they are sparring. I'm not saying they're not, but I think the focus is heavy more on the artistic side and the form of it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things. But that's not to say that that FMA practitioner can't shift that balance, right, of how much they spend on their, carenzas rather than, more live sparring, and make the sparring fun. Sparring is not fighting, but through sparring, you will be able to fight. It's still going to give you a very close idea of what the outcome is going to be. It's just the level of intent is differently, right? So and what I've noticed in the last few years, and I'm only speaking to what I've seen, because I think every generation sees the same thing, just in a different flavor, and it kind of has different seasons, but it all repeats. But what I'm seeing is a lot of FMA people nowadays, they have some better striking skills now. Like more of them are rolling, more of them are doing like Muay Thai or boxing, so I think that's already naturally happening because of people like, who have shown us that kind of stuff, like Psyox, Dog Brothers, stuff like that. You're always going to see that. And that's the thing that drew me to the stick fighting, is when I was learning it, I was learning from these guys, like from Renee, and even joining Justin and Dave's class whenever we took it over at Combat, like doing the beat the crap out of cancers and stuff like that. It was when I got exposed to it. But like it was fun because for me, it was like MMA with a stick. And like not much more you can do than that, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is that issue about like the fight game has been so elevated, especially here in the past 30 years, because of the UFC. There are so many more people in the fight game, and also just the fact of we're in a very connected digital world. So there's a lot of exposure to combat sports, availability to it, and also just we've had 30 years of UFC really leading the charge for a full spectrum approach to combat sports. I mean, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai also set a precedence, but with his like talk about the holy trinity of boxing, jiu-jitsu, and Muay Thai, I mean, that's what the UFC's done. Now, I don't ever think we'll ever get like a UFC level stick fighting event. I mean, I know there's been a couple of attempts at it, but the buy-in is too high. But that is an interesting evolution when you take a MMA fighter and put a stick in their hands and see what happens.
Yeah, huge. But I have to say, I do believe that one day we will see a premier level organization hosting full contact with weapons. You're starting to see it over in Europe a lot right now. These guys, check them out. These guys are having like one of the Dog brothers, Thomas Holdman, he's doing it. These guys are like fighting with the medieval attire, with the shields and stuff like that. That's some badass shit. Like I was seeing some guys smashing a helmet with a shield. You know what I mean? So it's there already, man. It's everything has its like black. What do you call it? Grassroots starting. So I honestly don't think we're too far off from actually having a league that does that stuff. I didn't think we'd have bare knuckle. I didn't think for a long time they didn't say they were gonna have women's MMA. So you never know, right? But when you put so I can imagine the crossover now. If you had like you were saying, if you had an MMA fighter starting to cross over into that world now, where you're starting to have a league of these guys and they're going to try something new, and I think stick fighting would take another leap, like the way that mixed martial arts happened in '93. Another thing cool to watch too is existing combat sports with weapons, and one of the ones I love to watch is the Lacane matches. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Yeah, like those guys are super athletic, and they're doing some crazy shit. I also just love fencing, or the kendo. But I don't know, man. I think it's like two things I notice are blowing up. Is jiu-jitsu is like, I think it's like another resurgence is blowing up. More and more people are doing jiu-jitsu. Seems to be everywhere. But I also think FMA is growing really quickly as well. I really do. I see more and more.
Agreed on both parts. I mean, the fact is, with the internet and the amount of social media presence that's out there, FMA and jiu-jitsu are like climbing together. So it's actually a really cool synergy to see when you see stick grappling or knife grappling. So, and also with the power of constantly testing stuff, because of combat sports has a medium to constantly test the skills and work their way up to prove the method works. The thing that I run into with like stick fighting and classical FMA is this issue of like, and I've asked this a couple of times and still haven't got a full answer on it, but it's this issue of what is the end all goal for a Filipino martial arts athlete staying true to FMA as a higher level athletic endeavor? Because with boxing, you can start at Golden Gloves and go to the Olympics and pro. For sport karate, you can do the same thing. But for FMA, there isn't a pro league. And I don't know, and I know there's some resistance about having like a unified pro league. I'm not talking about WCAF or PCAF because those are very specific to that group. But I'm talking like full on MMA stick fighting. Because one, the barrier to entry for some people is like getting your young 10, 11-year-old signed up for full contact stick fighting training. That's a lot to ask. But we'll definitely throw them into a jiu-jitsu school. So
yeah, well, I mean, the risk of jiu-jitsu is, the kid can tap, but the risk with kid playing with a stick is getting knocked out with a stick. So I think at the younger ages, but here's the flip side. If you have a kids class and these kids are playing with sticks, that's an attraction for them. It's fun for them. It's good coordination. There's a rhythmic sound. I think these are all good. I don't even personally like seeing young kids do MMA, to be honest with you. I think it should be reserved for adults, if you ask me. But I think that's the way to go for like culture-wise. It keeps the culture. It's a good thing to pass on the kids. It's fun for them. And then I think for the, as far as a sports league, I think the highest that they can go, and I'd like to see MMA get there as well, because I think that's the only thing they have to do is make it to an Olympic sport.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like if you can get, because you already have some combat sports that are Olympic sports, right?
Mhm.
But so why not MMA? Imagine if there was MMA, because you got great fighters coming from all parts of the country. You got a lot of good African fighters. You got a lot of
Yep.
good fighters from Russia, U.S., Canada. I think it would be very interesting. And if that would happen, I don't think that FMA would track too far behind because, like
Yeah.
I said, even in local shows, I know people who hold local cards like Muay Thai or MMA, and they've reached out to have a couple of people do like a stick fight as before the fight start.
Yeah.
That's how it starts, man. And if they get associated with that kind of culture or that community, it's
Mhm.
only a matter of time.
Man, so when I had my gym and my fight team here in Alaska, I was a co-owner on a fight promotion here on the peninsula. It's very much rough house boxing. And I always tried to hit with my fellow promoter, like, dude, let's get some stick fighting in here because I mean, I got a gym and a lineage to teach this stuff. Let's do it. He would never go on it. And I don't, and that's a bit of a frustration I've held with him for years, but it's just like, this would have been really cool. Because on the flip side, he had professional wrestling on our card every fight. So it's like, well, if you want entertainment, stick fighting is perfectly entertaining.
Oh
So why
man,
not? But back to the whole thing about turning MMA into the Olympics, I think the two pieces to lay the groundwork for it is one, jujitsu, whether gi or no gi, needs to be an Olympic sport, as does Muay Thai. I know Muay Thai was presented at the Olympics as a pre-qualifier or as an exhibition, but once those are set in, then I can definitely see MMA following and maybe FMA, a form of FMA stick fighting following thereafter. Because I mean, just Muay Thai alone is huge, and I mean, Jiu-Jitsu with everything that's going out there, I mean, it's definitely possible.
yeah, I think MMA would probably have a better chance to be honest with you because
Yeah,
Muay Thai, like there's rest periods in MMA, and it'll
yeah,
kind of hit two birds with one stone. It will get the
yeah.
grapplers happy and the mixed martial arts happy. So I think that would maybe be a leverage why that would happen first. I think Muay Thai is a little too bloody for that pedestal for that kind of level.
That's
You know,
fair.
I think maybe that's what they're worried about. But yeah, I really do think that if people keep training the way that they're doing now, and they have been for a
Mhm,
while, I'm just saying it's getting more commercial now. But if people keep training FMA and training it athletically like they do with other combat sports, I
mhm.
don't. I think it's going to reach a level where it's going to be mainstream, and it's just going to bring the level of practitioner up so much because they have this athletic background.
Agreed. Because I mean, the fact is, fighting principles are universal. Because we're
100%.
limited based upon the universe that we live in and the biomechanics of the human frame. Until we grow tails or other limbs, the fighting game isn't going to change much. Now, the tools are vary, but the fact is, a good boxer can be a good stick fighter. And a good stick fighter, there is still this issue again, like as much as FMA is done, like we give you the weapon first and figure out the hands later. The thing that I run into when you have certain academies or certain lineages that don't spar, who don't fight, who don't actually put this stuff to work, again, it just ends up being flow and fun and drill, but there's still, you have to put time on the mat. You still have to put time in the cage with a stick or otherwise. So, and I know there's some resistance there about like FMA purity versus like violence with a stick, because I've had that argument as well.
You hit a really good point there. And that was shit. It just crossed my. I just lost it for a second. Hold on.
Yeah.
So repeat what you were saying again about. Oh man, I
So,
just go ahead.
so
Sorry.
I was talking about FMA. So like some lineages want to stay true with play and having that like very pure approach to it. But when you have FMA being like combat sports, it can be construed as violence with a stick.
No, I remember now. It was the point that you were saying that you were showing the weapon first and
Hmm.
then loading the hands after. Maybe that's what it is because
Yeah.
if the guys that are coming from the boxing or the Muay Thai, they're having the experience without the weapon first. They have
Hmm.
their base like their empty hand first. Maybe that translation translates better than learning the stick first and then going into learning how to kick and punch and all that other stuff. That could be a
Yeah.
reason too because historically the reason why they were taught the weapon first is because they needed to back then. You're under warfare, so you don't have time to waste. You need to do. But I think that maybe that
Yep.
might be the approach. It might be the approach: just learn your basic strikes, your kicking, your punching, and then put the weapon in your hand. because for me, and my personal experience too, like when I started doing like sparring with the stick, even with the knife, I was so fixated on just the tool that I forgot everything else. Like I wasn't paying attention. I didn't associate that shit. But when somebody told me, he's like, don't worry about fighting with the stick or just stick fighting, just fight with the stick. That changed everything. So maybe that would be the approach. You know, I don't know what other people out there think, but maybe the getting the base and empty hand techniques, kickboxing, boxing, and then putting the stick gradually into that might change that.
Yeah, agreed. So like I constantly reference my instructor, Belton Lubis down in Seattle or down there in Bellevue. He had a really great video of working with one of his Muay Thai fighters, Charlie, for example. He said, here's a knife, here's a dummy, throw a jab. And it's essentially knife boxing.
Yeah.
So he already has that background in striking. You just put a tool in his hands and it acts as a force multiplier. You don't have the time. So it's a great little video.
I witnessed that. When Paulo came down. It's on video. When Paulo came down at Combat Arts, we had a good buddy of mine, Dave Vanier. He's a great guy, and they Shark Tanked him 11 straight. And one of the guys there, Leon, he was a boxer from Combat, and he started messing with the Kali. And right away, I was watching this guy box with his blade. I was like, wow, I never even thought about that way. Right when I saw that, I knew that's what I was going to do. A lot of people have been doing that, and it's one of those things that's so simple, but why haven't I thinking about it? Because you're not relating the two things together, right? Because emotion is emotion is emotion. Why wouldn't I want to punch somebody with that? You know what I mean? It makes so much sense, and I think people but I think they're better at that because they spent their time not having a weapon and focusing on that, just the fundamental mechanics of the actual skeleton, and then the weapon is just the extension after. That might be the route, I think.
I totally agree, and I mean the fact is the tool is secondary because the fact is we don't have claws, we don't have sharp bitey teeth, we don't have these intrinsic tools to us, so we have to add the tool to be force multipliers. So the fighting vehicle is the frame. So if we cannot fight, the tool serves us no purpose. And it's interesting enough when we talk about like personal protection and self-defense and we get so fixated on the tool, the fact is the tool is a paperweight unless we have skill and opportunity and willingness to use it. So that requires us to be the vehicle who actually can do the job, and you have the tool as a force multiplier. But again, part of the narrative with FMA has been like we train the tool first and then we do hands second, and either because they've just had to or they just do. It depends upon like the approach and like whatever narrative they're saying.
Yeah, I think that's what it is personally. Now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking about it through my experience. That seems to be it, because like I did a lot of traditional martial arts too when I started, and we did like a lot of, you know, we did the staff, we had the size, we had this, that, and the other, right? And I was just like I enjoyed learning the forms and moving with them. I never understood, like I couldn't fight with this. Yeah. Even though learning the forms, I couldn't fight with this because I don't understand how it feels to hit somebody, and I didn't have good boxing. I didn't have any of that, right? So, and I also think that. Like I don't know too much if they have this, but like, do you guys have in FMA? Do we have like a point fighting kind of thing?
Honestly, in my experience, not so much. I mean, we got PCAF and WACAF, which is like cumulative impact. Now, mind you, I've never fought in PCAF or WACAF. I'm just based on my observation because I just haven't had it available to me. But I know in smaller circles, you can do knife tag, you can do stick tag and treat it like point sparring. Because I mean, that's what I've done with my students in the past and with some other people. But as like a big national or international group, I really don't know. It would make sense to do it because it just does. Because the fact is, as soon as you make solid contact with a knife anyways, the fight's pretty much going to be over anyways.
Yeah, so. Yes and no, right? Like yes and no. Some people have been stabbed and they can still fight, right? And that's why I think there's like you know, there's kind of a pro and con to both. Because I know some people shit on, you know, when you see like Dog Brothers type of stuff, like, oh, why is these guys still fight? Well, because they're still training to fight. That's the thing. Yeah. They're not just knife fighting. They're fighting.
Yeah.
They're engaged. And now we're engaged. So what? I got stabbed. We both know this is not real. But at the same time, it's a great way to train that if I do get stabbed, I'm not just going to lay there and die. I got to keep fighting for that knife. I got to fight to get a position. I got to fight to get out, right? So I see the, you know, it's worth there. But I also like the tag stuff because it forces you to get really good on that first shot, and sometimes that first
Mhm.
shot's all you need, right? And the
Yep.
reason why I bring it up is I'm trying to relate it, because if you not even think about FMA, but if you look at like a lot of old school traditional martial artists, including myself, where they did like the point stuff, it didn't translate well when you start sparring other like continuous shit, because you had a habit of just looking for a shot, but you didn't
Yep.
have a good responsibility of recovering and
Yep.
repositioning, right? And so you get good in one area, and then you go to another area and you find out how much of it you're missing. And I think
Yep.
that's kind of like relatable to what I'm saying, trying to say, we're like possibly FMA just worrying about the art and the stick versus make it just thinking about fighting with the stick.
Yeah, because I mean, doing the point sparring, because I mean, I fought back in the 2000s and the 90s and like in NASCA and like pre-Olympic stuff, and the point sparring was very much like dynamic entry, get those quick hits, and teaching you to be athletic, quick on your feet, and working on those snap capabilities. Now, that can be the same with stick fighting and knife boxing, because the fact is telling you to be really quick on the entry and quick on the exit, because you may need to. And as we know from just fighting in general, you can still knock a person out with a single hit. I mean, that is a great go-to, because you can do like a cognitive disruption on somebody and just lay them out flat. The same can be said with a stick or a knife as well. I mean, that is a great goal. But much to your point, you have to have a follow-up game. But like getting somebody introduced into like do that initial strike, close the gap, and then come out with an exit strategy as necessary. It's I guess that's a matter of like training methodologies and putting that into practice. But that also requires the person guiding the students in this practice to have that breadth of knowledge and experience to at least translate this idea and then putting it into practice. Because that's the other thing I run into is like you got a lot of people who are trying to teach fighting that have never fought. And so they're speaking on things that they really don't know.
Yeah. No, you're right, because you have to experience that, right?
Yeah.
If you want to teach it and fight, whether you're fighting in one sport or one area, or as long as you have fought in,
Mhm.
in something, you know what fighting is.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Whether you're a jiu-jitsu athlete, whether you're a Muay Thai athlete, whether you're a boxing athlete, whether you're a full contact stick fighter, as long as you have fought, you understand what that is. Because that's the other thing too, man, is when you have the stick, right?
Mhm.
And you just worry about, like, I've sparred people. I'm not talking about fighting, I'm not talking about sparring, but they're always their go-to. They're not, it's like they don't really try to hit you.
Yeah.
Most people are just trying to hit your helmet
Yep.
or like, hit your glove. But that's not what it's at. When you're stick fighting, I'm not going to hit what's padded.
Nope. You're gonna hit all the other stuff.
You know what I mean? That's so I think that's another reason too. Like, there's like this, like, I don't know if it's an old school thing, but they're not looking to like, oh, this would kill you, so we don't do this technique type of thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you're like, oh, how do I hit somebody? Because if I hit somebody in the head, great, it stops. But if I don't hit them and
Mhm.
I don't have a plan B, that I have that weapon now potentially being taken away from me and being used on me.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's the point of fighting, is that the conflict, the cardio that comes with it, the mental toughness that's to come with it, the resiliency, the putting pressure, how to deal with pressure, how to compose. So if you don't fight, you're not going to understand how to do that. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think enough of the FMA guys, like, why don't FMA guys ever do sparring without the stick? And like, we have to
Throw
spar.
hands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no hands. So say like a round is like 2 minutes, right? So let's do a minute just sparring. And after that minute, weapons get thrown in and you got to get to your weapon and pick up the weapon and go from there.
Yep.
That to me would make a better training than to just do one or the other. You know what I mean?
Agreed. I mean, because the fact is, there is an exact reason for maintaining the art, the culture, and the heritage for that sake. There is an absolute truth why we should do that. But also to maintain the culture, the art, and the heritage is we have to defend it with the culture, the art, and heritage. So why not train the stuff as much as we're battle tested, coming from a lineage of battle tested methodologies? We still have to be battle tested. We
Yeah.
still have to test this stuff. We still have to fight and prove that we can make this work, because not our ancestors, not our forefathers, not our grandmasters. We, if we're going to carry the banner forward, we actually have to be worthy of that banner and prove that we can make it work in current situations, not just the cultural aspect, but like the combat capability. Because hate to see like the dojo storming like they did back in the 80s and the 90s, but I would hate to see dojo storming in an FMA school where they actually don't spar, and like, well, it makes it look bad for everybody. So again, people just need to fight. They need to spar, they need to train, and they need to have that resistance so they don't fall prey to like ego and rhetoric, because I see so much of that out there, not just in FMA, but just like in things in general. We don't actually put this stuff to work. How do you know it's actually going to work?
Yeah, you got to pull the weeds out of the garden. And you made a
Yeah.
good point there, because I don't understand why people, I don't know how many people, but I know there are people like that because I've seen it and heard it in the community. But I don't understand why people think that it has to be just one thing. There's so many layers and aspects to the art. There's the art, there's the culture, there's the tradition, there's the combat. There's a lot of different aspects and dynamics. So, why not display them all? You're going to have people that are going to funnel into certain, they might not be the greatest fighter, but they can twirl a stick beautifully and they have it down to a science. That's an important thing. That's an important skill. There's another person who maybe doesn't train at all, but they know all the stories and the legends and they witness duels and whatever, right? That's still important to the art. You know what I mean? But if you don't have those fighters, then you're going to get, the truth is going to get lost again. It's going to get covered up. And then it's going to go back into this like fantasy shit where, you're going to knock people out with the chi off your stick. You have to have all those aspects, I believe. And I think all of them should be respected equally because all of them are a piece of the pie. I think and more of that needs to happen.
I totally 100% agree with you, because the fact is, being a Filipino, I need to know my culture, my heritage, and know like these important nuances in particular to my people. But I also need to know that like I can fight with this stuff because it's just intrinsic to all. I also need to know the stories. I need to know the history. So one, I can teach it to my students and more importantly to my children. And so all this matters in the grand tapestry is that, yes, the core of this is fighting, because the fact is it is. But because of the fighting gives us the opportunity to have all these fun discussions about the history and the culture, the lineage, and all these things. But it all boils back to at the behest of fighting. And not to sound political, but the fact is, freedom of speech comes at the behest of violence and the threat of violence. So the art comes from warfare. So we have to have that balance of the two.
Yeah. I mean, the whole reason why I always trained was for the self-defense aspect of it. Unfortunately, the bullshit is strong nowadays when it comes to 100%.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like honestly, man, like I'll be honest with you guys. I used to train martial arts because of self-defense strictly. I didn't give a shit about competing at first. Then I wanted to test it out. I compete a little bit, but even like nothing like legit, like in a ring in front of people. I never did that because I didn't give a shit about that, and I had anxiety for that. But like, I spar in the gym. I'll go to throwdowns. I compete in jiu-jitsu. I want to compete again. But I wanted to know that if someone broke in my house, that I could grab a hammer, I could grab a stick, I could grab a flashlight, I could grab something, and the motions I know from my training are going to translate with that weapon, and I'm going to be able to defend my family. That's what really matters. Imagine you do 20 years of FMA or whatever, and then someone breaks in your house and you get your ass handed to you.
Yeah.
And none of the shit that you do your fucking time, the time that you spend leaving your family, the time you spend in, and it was for nothing. I would be so pissed off of myself. I need to know it works. And I don't want to find out that night. So that's why I need to have good training partners, people I trust that say, you're going to fucking hit me. I'm going to hit you. It's all in good fun. But let's really like make sure this is not bullshit. Because at the end of the day, this is insurance for my family.
Oh, 100%. Because all that pain has to have purpose. So
because it's intimidating, Renee.
Yeah. I mean, you get like a 12-incher. Hell yeah.
Big black
some weight behind it.
Yeah, man.
But the thing is with FMA, and this just comes to the issue with any martial art, but those who don't fight run the risk of obscurity. FMA in certain sectors runs the risk of becoming obscure and chi ball or chi stickish because of the practitioners don't fight. It's just plain and simple. So there is a space for everything, but it still comes back to the core is you still have to have that proof of like you can do it. The system can do it, not your forefathers, not the grandmasters, but you, because they've already been there and done that. You need to be able to do it. Because, I mean, and this boils back to, like, what is your reason why? But at the core of it, your reason why still needs to be, like, it's still physical and capable. Because confidence comes from capability.
Yeah, I mean, but like, here's the thing, though. On the 100%. 100%. That's why, like, James hit it, right? Like, that's what I liked about when we were training at the Boudoirs, because we would just be like, hey, let's play with this versus this. Let me grab this. I started playing with nunchucks there again. We started using weird stuff. But that's the beauty part, but that goes back to the original of our conversation, right? Is because when you train like a boxing, Muay Thai, whatever it is, because you're athletically moving and you're building timing and you're balanced and like that, if you can use and operate your body the way you want, then whatever you put in your hand is going to be, you're going to find it because you understand movement. That's the key. Understand movement, have good timing, have good reaction, then having knowledge of skill and, technique, tactic. Obviously that's important, but that's like the more of the mental aspect. That's not the physical aspect. The physical aspect, and that was to my point originally in that other podcast, is that's why I believe they would do better than the FMA. An FMA guy could have a better theory. He can wield that stick better. But if I get past your stick and I box you, or I get past that stick and I clinch you, or I get past that stick and I take you down, that's it. You're going to have a hard time now.
The fact is, if you have not built up the resiliency of understanding like what it is to get hit, problem solve through that different level of pain, and find out that you can actually survive through all those different levels, then you're going to have a real problem, because you run into this issue, like back to point sparring or point stick tag, is if you don't have that understanding of like, I can work my through different levels of pain to achieve the goal here, they can just crumble immediately. So with enough fighting experience, you can have the breadth of language to say that, okay, I'm hurt, I'm slightly injured, I'm discomfort, okay, that thing is kind of sore, but you have that capability to work your way through that and actually process through that engagement without it being catastrophic and saying, oh, I got hit, now I'm done. It's like, no, it's, if you fight enough, you learn the different levels and you can work your way through it.
You see this guy, he's the reason why people don't fight, because they don't want to it's easier to say, some people. Yeah, some people. And that's the thing. But see, like, this is where I think, going back to that point before, where there's a place for everybody in the art. It's fine if you want to just learn the art. You don't have to know how. Some people don't want to fight, but they like the art of it. There's like, that's fine. They can teach that part. If you're, that's true. But that's more, I think, geared towards people who are combatants. You know, people who like just want to do the art aspect of it. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that either. The problem is, Kurt, I believe, is when somebody who wants to do the art aspect of it and says they're a fighter and they're not fighters.
Yep. Because art isn't necessarily fighting.
No,
fighting can be art, but art itself, just expression, is not fighting.
Yeah, because what do you do in times of peace, right? How you practice your art. You know, you have to do it. It's not necessity to fight, but you got to stay sharp. You got to stay ready. But, that's why Carenza is beautiful, right? That's why Carenza is beautiful. There's nobody to spar that day. Let me just Carenza. Carenza is a beautiful thing. I used to, the thing I like about Carenza, and more than like the difference, was I learned in kata. Like I now I'm going back to, like, I've been working some stick forms I learned in like 2006. 2006, 2007. I started reconnecting with Mopai Kempo, and I started doing some of the staff forms when I'm by myself. I do that, or I'll practice my Balintawak shadow fighting form, or I'll just Carenza, right? So when I do that, that's another important thing too, because you get really fit from doing that, like moving around, like, it's incredible. And the thing about kata, though, is like, kata is like, it's an idea or principle of a level, style, or flavor, and it's blueprint, and here it is, practice it, right? I like that. There's structure to it. Everybody kind of has a distinct look, but everybody does it different because they're all different bodies. But what I liked about Carenza is it's like a freestyle, like you're shadow boxing.
That's how I treat it.
Yeah, that's what it should be, right? And so the correlation, and that's another reason why I think You know, you start seeing somebody shadow box, not just standing still and making X's in the airs, but you start seeing somebody shadow box and punching and kicking and kneeing. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, you could get better. I think you can get better at traditional martial artists can get better just starting to implement that into their game, because now they're already working the movement, right? And but it's funny how all these arts, they all have this component to it, right? And I think that, I don't know if it's like I say, some people just sell it as a program to kids, and we get them doing a lot of click, 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 click,
which is fine. Yeah.
Which is fine. Like I said, it's still an important piece of it. But when people want to speak of it as a whole, they should stay in their lane. I'm not gonna answer that shit.
He'll send you a link later.
He's great. He's great.
Yeah, yeah. So Carenza being shadowboxing, it's always the way I've treated it, because the fact is, what I use Carenza for now is I ask questions. I ask to, like, how do I make this work, or I have a concept that I'm trying to figure out, and how do I make this concept work for my body, or I ask a question like, what do I? It's a whole bunch of what ifs. It's flowing the air just because, I mean, that's fun and athletic, but there has to be a purpose behind it. Just like your shadow boxing, there has to be a thing that you're working on. But again, if you don't have a fighting background, you don't think that way, because you have a pre-described routine of kata and forms, but if there isn't that connection made either by the person or being mentored to them, saying, hey, these are the reasons why we do those movements, visualize, execute, and make it happen, and make it work for you, people get lost just doing dance routines. So
I know, like, I get on my students about, like, right now, I'm not teaching JKD classes anymore. Well, I go to combat when I can, but my life's changed right now, so other things have come up. But I still try to make when I can. But right now, because it's closer to home during the week, I teach a Muay Thai program. And when these guys are like, when I tell them shadow box, I can tell distinctively right away who's just who's actually like visualizing their last sparring session and working shit out. And that's what I tell them, like, guys, when you guys are shadow boxing, visualize that shit, man. Don't just fucking. You can either show up and just go do the motions, or you can grow through the motions. Like, visualize that shit, because when you start to visualize, like, for me personally, when I'm messing around with my shadow boxing with a knife, I really am visualizing. I really am visualizing as much as I can. I'm trying to, because for me, if I have that visualization, it makes it more real for me. It makes me, like, actually move and think about things, like where their arm would be and stuff like that. You know what I mean? For me, I do a really good, like, imagine you start to see, like, FMA matches, full contact matches, and it was with more than just, like, the sticks. Like, for example, like, what are those things called? The little dulos or whatever?
Palm stick?
Imagine doing a round like that. And when you're grappling, you can use it to manipulate. Like, I shadow box with that shit all the time. So if I have my Bali song, I'll have it in my hand. I'll shadow box with just my. I do this, and I have it set to a timer. I'll shadow box with just my hands, right? And as soon as it beeps, I cover, I take it out, and I go sock. And then when it beeps, I switch it to Pakal. And then when it beeps, I switch it to the other hand. And that shadow boxing is so important, because I'm learning how to, first of all, punch without it. Even having it in my hand before I open it, it's like the dulo, right? I can have it here, and I can hit somebody like this. I can ridge hand him with that. It's so important. You can do that with your keys. You can do that with anything. So that will transfer on so many different ways. And right there, that is more realistic than just clacking sticks.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the thing that is uniquely me in the community, I mean, that's why I do stuff with a rubber chicken or a sport. I'm proving combative skill set, but with an innocuous tool, because the fact is, it's the intent behind it, not the tool. And again, it's asking questions of myself, the situation, and visualizing it. Because again, going back to, like, kids, I cut up a bunch of recent video of working with my teens when I had the gym. And I had a drill where they were like, we're going to shadow box, but 6 feet away from each other. So you're going. It's a fun one, but it was really funny to watch, because, like, they didn't make the mental connection. Because, I mean, one, a lot of these kids just don't come from a combative background. They just don't think that way. And so there's a lot of time and just development that isn't there. But, like, getting them to, like, visualize, you have your partner on either side, you're throwing punches offensively, you're dealing with it defensively, but you're not actually making contact. So do the stuff, but like visualize it without the risk of actually taking impact. And it was really hard for them, and because like they just didn't think that way. But when people who can do it, that's pretty amazing. So
it is, and it's so good for reactionary, uh,
yeah,
like attribute builders, because it gives them that safe space where they don't have to worry about getting hit, but they can still
yep,
respond to movements. You know what I mean?
yep,
I think that's really smart, and I think this whole like I warm up my students with this too. It's a great point you made. That's a good drill. I'll have them, especially if there's new people in the class, as part of their footwork drill. I just have them stand in front of each other and just
yep,
keep range. So one person
yep,
leads, one person follows. Right. This person
yep,
steps this, and then the other guys, like the more intermediate guys, they'll all add in the quarter turns. Right.
yep,
So, and the purpose is like you guys keep that distance. Right. And then how I progress it is I have this, I don't have enough of them, but I have this really cool belt, and it's got like a spring, like a cable,
yeah,
and then it has another one. So now you set it to the length. So if this person steps back, it's going to pull you with them.
yeah. I've done the same.
Yeah.
That's great.
Because some people that they don't have the ability to keep. So that's how I like training wheel that with them. Right. And doing that for like 3 or 4 months, you'll start to really learn like not only how to keep pace, but they'll start to learn, oh, I should kick here and I should punch here, because it helps them know that distance. You know what I mean? Now,
And a lot of,
how translating that with a stick,
oh yeah,
that would be. I would love to figure out how to do that. That would be a cool thing to kind of work out, because I think that's the other thing too, is people forget, you know, the range. The range with the stick can be tricky, man, depending on how you hold it and what stance you're in. And some people think they're safe, and some people don't think they're safe. Some people rush in too soon. And I think a lot of the range is not played out safe in sparring, especially a knife. I think people stay way too close. Tie people's sticks together.
Okay.
Maybe have a string from the wrist to the wrist. I don't know. But try to keep them in range, or they have to keep that contact.
Let's see. I think actually I have I'll find it later. I actually have a video of exactly what we're talking about. I had 2 of my youth students that like we took old white belts, tied them off with an elastic band in between them. It's like stay in the pocket, stay there, and hit each other.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can you imagine doing like taking the tire drill from boxing? They have the lead leg in and they stay in the pocket and box. Can you imagine doing that for Belinta walk?
Oh yeah, that'd be crazy. That'd be excellent.
Like you could take these attribute building drills and just start like, okay, let's steal it. Let's see how it applies. Yeah. I think that's the way to do it, man. I think that's the way to keep it on the edge, to keep it athletic, to keep it real. I think that's and how we go. It's all about how we train, how we formulate, and how we distinguish combat from, you know, the art.
And a big part about that is talking about having the result. What is the goal? What is the intent? What's the purpose behind this drill other than doing athletics? Because if you're just doing athletics, you're floating in the air doing dance choreography. But there has to be a fighting principle that this attaches to. We should be going after the results, not the specific techniques of how to get there.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's the difference right there. You said it. So when you are doing it the art, it's like is the correct word subjective. You can kind of like it's anything you want to do. It's what's inside, how you feel. It's your flavor. Yep. Fighting is objective.
Oh yeah.
There's a definite fucking outcome that you're looking for. You know what I mean?
There's rules and consequence. And consequence.
It either works or doesn't. I would be a fool to try to do. That's what sparring is for. See, like that's sparring for my guys. I'm like, just play, you know, work out your shit. Remember the fundamentals. Remember how to keep yourself safe. But like, play, be original. But when you're fighting, don't be original. Fucking do the job. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because play, I mean, that's where experiment comes comes into play. Because it gives you an opportunity to adapt. Because that's a big part, is being able to adapt and being creative. And so once you figure out all that creativity and then hone it into a process of execution, because fighting, it's execute. You've done all the work, you've done all the play. Now you got to put it together and execute and make it happen. And too often enough, it's just like, again, going back to like when you don't spar, when you don't fight, people get lost in the play and get lost in the flow. And the fact is, you got to keep coming back to combative principles. Got to keep coming back to combat. Now, different stages for different people. Like for me, FMA right now isn't about fighting. It's about enjoyment and love and like the things I'm enjoying about it. I mean, yes, I can fight with it if I need to, but the reality is I'm enjoying FMA for FMA's sake. Now, if I want to fight, yeah, I there's aspects of FMA that I will use to fight, but there's also boxing, Muay Thai, and all of these other things. But at this point in my life, because I've done a lot of competition, I've fought a lot. I really just want to like keep riding the warranty, even though I voided the warranty a long time ago, and just keep my body moving. So,
and I think that, and I commend you, and I think that that's the way to do it, man. I think that if you're gonna really teach the art, you have to have some combative experience with it. You don't have to be the best fighter. You don't got to be this. You don't got to be that. But you had to have at least tested your merit. You'd have to at least test it what you're teaching. And like when we're younger, we do the fighting and stuff like that. When we're older, we mature. That's the kind of the evolution. That's kind of goes with everything, right? We're not going to be full of
piss and vinegar.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So there's going to be a time where you slow down, right? So when you slow down, you can't move the same way. And the one thing I learned from Guru Dan when he said it, is just like it resonated. Is like you got to kind of check yourself every 10 years. Every 10 years, your body's not the same. You got to recalibrate. You got to recalibrate. What did I lose? What did I gain? How does my body move now? You got to fix that shit, because if you don't, and you just keep thinking I could do this because I used to be able to do it, that you're going to be in a big world of hurt if you ever have to try it, right? And I think that's how it should be. If you're going to be a teacher and pass it on, you have to have had some of that combat, because then you can appreciate it. You've been there, done that. You know what you're capable of. It's the people that they don't test themselves, but they talk a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And they get really defensive. You know what I mean? And they find an excuse. And like somebody who's been there or done that, they don't carry that kind of vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can appreciate soft side of it because they've done the hard side of it. But if you've never done the hard side of it and you only teach the soft side of it, you can't teach the complete art.
Agreed. So what are your thoughts on teachers who spar their students? Because there's a certain level of like instructors out there, and this is very unprofessional of them in my viewpoint, of like, I will never spar my students because I always want to beat them, or I always want to have something I can hold back to prove that I can beat them, and it's all ego. But what is your thoughts about instructors who spar their students and displaying all those faults and potential risk of failure?
So I believe that, well, let's look at it this way. When you have an older brother, right, and he kicks the shit out of you all the time, you get mad and you cry and you're like, I won't cry next time. And you're learning so much. You're having fun. You're getting your ass kicked, but you're learning so much. And the respect you have for your brother, because it's like a rite of passage, right? So I believe that you should spar your students, 100%, 100%, 100%. You're not going to get the same connection, But let's look at it, right? Let's look at it like this. You look at a guy like D'Amato, he's not going to fucking spar Tyson because he caught him. There's a time and a place, right? And I think as instructors, while we're still able, it is our duty to give that to them, to give the energy to them, just like we receive. Because anybody who has some good skill is because they had a teacher who could test them.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of the common denominator here. If your instructor had any worth of what he was going to test you and give you some physical resistance. Otherwise, you were at a McDojo, right? And if you don't do that, you don't connect with your student. And here's the other thing too, Kurt. I was lucky. I had some good instructors, but I had some shit ones too. And here's the thing. Well, you need them. You see what I mean? Like, even if they're shit, thank you. I look at if I learn one thing. There's a lot of people out there I don't like that much, but I learned something from them. And even if I don't like them, I have to credit them for what I learned from them, because I didn't learn it. Right? I didn't learn it. Whether or not I like you, you contributed to my knowledge. Thank you for that. And if you can't find the good in something, even if you don't like it, you're going to be a very limited person. And, and that relates to martial arts. Like, oh, fuck Aikido. Oh, no, I don't want to learn that. That's so stupid. Oh, how do you know it's stupid? Do you know the whole art? There's got to be something. If you can't find something that you can use from that art, you got other problems. You know what I mean? But back to what I was saying, how do you build a bond with your students if you don't give them that energy? You have to show them. You have to show them. And here's the other thing. As a good instructor, you can't do that forever. You have to, the point is you have to build somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah.
That's what your senior students are for. You know, because when you become the older guy, or even your student surpasses your skill level because they got a better engine that they're running, you know, they got less injuries, they're bigger, they're stronger. Use them. Use them as a person because they are your success. You know what I mean? So I don't think you can have a good student-teacher relationship. I don't think you can have a healthy check of ego. I don't think you can create a culture of people who are testing each other, like really testing each other, but at the same time growing respect and camaraderie for each other without having that component. Otherwise, it's bullshit.
Yeah,
really,
totally.
it's bullshit.
Well, like the thing that I ran into, so like my last year before I shut the gym down for health reasons, is all my pro guys and semi-pro guys moved on because it's just we live in a small town and people just move on. So the majority of my time spent with my teenagers was me in the ring with them because I didn't have anybody really to spend the time with them. So I spent 20 rounds in the ring on a Friday night with my teenagers, and I put in work with them. Now I missed that level of cardio. My head does not miss that level of impact, but the fact is, it comes and goes in waves. And unless you're like in a gym that's constantly has a barn full of fighters, you just get what you get. And that's honestly the reality of martial arts in general is that you have the level of athletes present at any point as to what you have there available based upon who and what in that community. Yeah. But if you get on the mat with them and get in the ring with them, you're still training, and as same with them.
Yeah, I and that's the thing is this is where it goes like the back and forth shit, right? Because we're talking about fighting and stuff like that, and that's really where the proving ground is. But like, if that's all you worry about, then you really lose the beauty of the art. Yeah, because so much of the art that's important, is not about fighting. You know, it's about just the time you're spending with the people you're sweating with, the time you're spending with the people that you're training with. The impact you've had on someone's life, the impact you have on their skill, the influence you give one person, even if they don't want to appreciate you for it, even if they don't want to give it to you, because that happens too, believe me, right? But it's all good because in at the end of the day, we've all learned something from each other. We're all trying to take part of this thing that's been around for hundreds of years, and we're just having our turn at it. And at the end of the day, what you should do is get what you need out of it, but also give back something for somebody else.
Agreed. Because the fact is, martial arts, like the military, because I mean, martial, the fact is, it is contingent upon been there, done that. If you've been in martial arts long enough, just like you've been in the military long enough, you've been there, done that. Especially if you start off as a base level private or a white belt who became a black belt, you've been there, done that. So it's that time in and time out and passing on that information, the knowledge, and the wisdom, and that care to the collaborative effort here of like, we're trying to make the thing work for all of us. So at any point, a black belt has been a white belt before. A sergeant has been a private before. It's just there's that constant gradual growth that there's time bought in. So, and the thing that I run into with people, like when they come at like the online approach of they haven't been there, haven't done that, there is a lot of misunderstanding as to like the process. And this is where you run into the charlatans and just a lot of the vitriol that we see online.
And I think, like you were mentioning a while back, the dojo starting thing, you know, that's got its place too.
Yeah.
That needs to happen too, because that's, you know, nobody likes to be that guy. Nobody, you know, some people, especially in our society, the way people look at shit. But honestly, that's the way I look at that is like, man, that's how you get remembered. And not only that, but that's how you pluck out the weeds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because look what happened to you know, in mixed martial arts, right? That whole shit was set up for jiu-jitsu. That was one of the most brilliant marketing enterprises in human history, I think. But it proved the point, and we all learned from it, right? Good or bad, whatever. We all learn from it. I think that kind of stuff needs to happen again. I don't think that should have been just a one-time thing. That should not have been a one-time thing. Look how much has evolved since then. But let's do that for other arts. All right, let's do that for other arts. And the thing about FMA too is I think they have to look at models like how fencing has.
Yep.
And I think because there's so many dynamics to FMA. That's one thing I like about FMA. I'm sure you know already, but I consider myself a JKD guy, a JKD practitioner. I look at everything through that lens, right? Yep. But I really appreciate FMA because it's very vast.
Oh yeah,
it really is. It's very vast, maybe too much. That's why it causes a lot of camps between each other. But it's so vast, and they should look at how to pick and choose certain aspects of their art, because I think if they do that and they formulate it like how fencing does it or like Lacane does it, I'm telling you, it will be huge.
Absolutely, because the fact is, again, going back to the whole point sparring versus full contact sparring, you're learning different things. It's still fighting, but we have to have that conscious understanding of the differences between the two, but also see the value of the two. Because the things I love about Olympic saber fight or Olympic fencing is that quick entry, that precision of a strike. Now, from boxing, that's precision of a jab, that's precision of a cross. With stick fighting or knife boxing, it's the same thing. It's that precision and explosiveness. Now, it's not the one and done and can be the one thing that works, because that's the thing we run into with some of the approaches of some other Asian martial arts out there is the one hit knockout. It should be the one hit knockout, which it can be, but it's not always the case. But it's that understanding of precision and capability and opportunity that's phenomenal. But you still have to have the totality of understanding and practice to actually see that can happen, because you can definitely win a fight by knocking a person out, but you may also have to fight the guy long enough to knock them out. So
I know
where you need that.
I keep circling back to this point though, but I apologize, but the reason why I keep circling back to this point is because I think that's the major issue that I'm seeing. I really, really do, because it's either super artsy, lineage based, or Dog Brother. And I think there's a lot of in between that can be filled in.
Yeah, agreed.
That's true. Everyone, and I think that's, you see, and to Renee's point, this is why I think jiu-jitsu is doing so well right now.
Yeah, creating athletes.
Well, it's not just that. Yeah. There is a standard.
Yeah.
I know for a fact a BJJ black belt will
mean something.
Will murk somebody.
Yeah, right? Straight up.
Okay, but can you say that for every other art and their ranking? No. It's a very consistent, not even Muay Thai. And Muay Thai is super effective, but there are Muay Thai coaches. Again, it comes back to that place. Some people are good teachers, but they're not fighters.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are good teachers, but never fought. And there's some fighters who can't teach for shit.
Yeah.
And then there's the rare few that can do both.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, and it's true. And that's going back to my point. Sorry, jiu-jitsu is, that there's a consistency there, right? But how did that consistency come? Because these guys will go out and challenge each other.
Absolutely. And they have a means to do so.
They'll call you out. Oh, you're a black belt under who? No, you're not. Let me go to your school and roll you and destroy you. I'm going to show up as a white belt. Yep. And I'm going to destroy you. And I'm going to ask you where you got your belt from. There's so many of those videos.
Yeah,
Imagine if people started doing that for FMA. Imagine if people started doing that for any art. JKD. Anything. You would see. But the problem is you can't do that. You're going to get offended. You're going to get kicked off Instagram,
Well, the other thing that I run into, just playing devil's advocate here, is rolling up in whatever system and saying, hey, we're going to dojo storm and see if you can actually do your thing. Are you proving that you can fight, or that your system is capable of fighting, or are you proving that you can fight within the rules of your system?
Yeah, but
'Cause-
listen, and if you're making a meal, you taste it first.
yeah,
So how are you going to teach something you haven't even fought with?
agreed. Totally agree on that one. It's just I can see like the wheels turning with the people out there saying like, well, you're just showing up and doing violence with a stick, and that's not truly FMA. It's like what really makes it FMA is it because the cultural attachments and features, or we talk about the terminology, or we talk about all these things that make a curriculum, or are we just getting down to brass tacks of like, can you fight and can you fight with a stick?
Well, I think that comes down to certain people though, because like, for example, right, you want to have pride in your art, right?
Yep.
You want to have pride in your art and be like, oh yes, it's very effective, it's very good. Yes,
Yep.
it's been okay. So that's very good because it's violent,
Yeah.
but that's not the only part of it. And I think people need to not be afraid and say, oh, like don't worry about that, because if people are like, oh, you're only doing the violence part, well, yes, we are. We're learning. That's what we're focusing on. Yes, that aspect. However, we also remind the student that there's other aspects to the culture in this, but we are right now working on this.
Yep.
I don't think there's something wrong with saying that. I think people need to say that and not be worried about that, because it's going to get diluted. It's going to get diluted. And imagine if boxers never sparred and then go fight. You know what I mean? There's no boxing katas. The only thing that boxing has in common with FMA is Carenza. And that's so important, right? But other than that, like, what if the boxers started taking, the route that some FMA people follow? That shit would have been lost.
Yep.
It would have been all been theory and stories and blind belief, you know?
100%.
So, yeah, so I think that's where the problem is. I think the problem is people want to stay true to the tradition, but in order to actually be good with it, they have to not be traditional.
Agreed. I totally agree on that one. Because like the way that and how do you do that when you have a singular presentation? So like somebody who has been raised up in whether FMA school and that's all that they've been shown and practiced, how do they have that breadth of experience? And it's not their fault per se, because if they're a child and that's all their parents could pay for, because using the karate approach, because a lot of us growing back in the 90s and the 2000s, that's pretty much what was all available to us. It was
but there was some good karate. There's some good karate too.
Dude, there was Bird Trail here. My favorite taekwondo school that I trained with was these Vietnamese refugee kids in the bottom of a Vietnamese church. I mean, these kids could scrap because they grew up in the camps, and so they had to fight. So when I was working with them, it's like these are straight up killers because they had to be. Very different than like Johnny and Petunia's like belt dojo, which was also taekwondo underneath ITF, but it's a whole different wheelhouse. So but having that,
you just said it, man.
You have to have that experience of different flavors to observe what is what and what is good and what isn't.
I got students, right, that come in and they're just looking at exercise. I got students that come in and they want to be like, they want to get stronger, right? I got students who come in and they want to compete. It's so important. I understand them.
Yeah.
It's so like it's so cheesy to say, right? But like you have to be like a family, right? Even if it's dysfunctional, because we're all sharing a space, we're all going to interact with each other. But I really need to know who these people are.
Yeah.
And most importantly, they need to know who I am. Like I'll tell people straight up, I'm like, hey, this is how I am. I don't know if this is gonna be a fit for you, but this is how we do it here. This is how I am. So just letting you know. And we either gonna mesh or we don't. You either get my sense of humor or you don't. But I'm not changing for you, because I know if you stay now, okay, now we can build from here. But it's very important that we know what the focus of this person wants. Like somebody who's coming in at 50 something years old with some back problems, they don't want to do full contact stick fighting. Maybe they just want to fucking leave the house and not hear their wife complain or their mother-in-law or whatever, or maybe they got kids and it drives them. They just need some quiet time to do something else. He's just there, but he can still be a useful person. He can still learn that art. He can still do something with it, right? Yeah. If we learn how to approach our students based on what they're there for, then I think that way we can stay like very honest, very genuine in our approach and how we teach them. We're going to know what portion of the martial art they're going to be more susceptible to wanting to learn. And if I want to fight, if I want to train the fighter, he's not going to give a shit about the form. He's not going to give a shit about certain things. He's just going to care about how the functional aspect works. And that's great. I can get right down to it with that person. I think that needs to happen. I think it needs to be more like that, because with traditional arts, the thing that lingers with traditional arts is the cookie cutter. You don't look good unless you do it this way, and it has to be exactly like this, and no, you can't change it, and then that's why people leave, because I can't fit into you can't fit a triangle into a square hole.
Square peg round hole.
You know what I'm trying to say, right? You got to be able to give a little bit of flexibility. You got to be able to give a little bit of creativity and uniqueness to each student, and at the same time, you got to make them excited about what it is they're learning. Because if you're learning an art like Muay Thai, right, it's a very proud art. It's a prestigious art. It's a war art. It's a beautiful history. It's old. It's got a distinct, right? But there's like Dutch style. There's different like ways of it. So one person might fit more of that style than the other. I can't tell him he's wrong. I can just correct his technique. That's it. And that's, I think, FMA is wrong too. Same thing with Wing Chun. Same thing with JKD. They have a really big problem like that. There's a lot of politics in those martial arts as well, because of whose lineage, how we do it, what's better, what's this and what's that. This is not that. This is not this. I think there needs to be a general consensus of the art, but people need to have the freedom to like approach it the way their body works and the way their mind works. And we have to have that freedom.
Exactly, because it boils down to what is your reason why, and your reason why will change throughout time, because all the things we just discussed about life and composition and where you're at, because that's just the way life is. Because if you're doing the same thing at same reasons why at 10 years old, at 40, you have to have some variability. You've had one could say you had a very boring, very focused life, and the fact is you're trying to focus on fighting as a 20-year-old when you're 40. Yeah, it could be possible, but you're limiting your scope and your worldview and your experience. Because again, what we run into is this issue about dogma and rhetoric and stagnation. So, and with those things, that's how an art dies. That's how an art becomes obscure and a meme of itself. Because the fact is, you need to have that creativity and that freedom to like throw rocks in the pond and figure out things for you. Because again, there's stuff that your body, that the human body can do. We have the limits of the potential of what we can do, but not everybody can make the things work for their body that say that an instructor can, because people just have limitations. People are different, and they need to have the freedom to say, yes, I can work within the framework of like what the curriculum is, but ultimately to fight, I have to figure out this for myself and make it work for me and my frame, because I'm not going to be able to move like my students, and vice versa, my students to me. The goal is to try to make it work so they can have a nice balance between the two. But the reality is, just person to person, we're two different people. Now, the goal is to like work underneath the curriculum, make sure there's a standard there. But the fact is, people are different and unique.
That's why I heard that. Oh man, his name's slipping my mind right now. But from Pikiti Tersha to Tuhan there, he taught different. Like he taught the art, but certain people he taught them different, or he taught certain things to certain people, certain things to other people.
Yeah,
I think that's really, I think that's a good thing, because it keeps it colorful. It keeps it like interesting, and it still makes it so that other people have to still learn from each other.
Agreed.
But on the flip side, you gotta art like Balintawak. That's very like, boom, this is what it is. And it's got its pros as well, because everybody has a level they have to reach. There's a standard, which I like that, because you have it open, it gets lost, right? It gets kind of like shit finds its way in that shouldn't be there. But if you make it too strict, you're not producing like creative fighters. You're not growing fighter IQ, But I think even with the Balintawak, right, you got people out there, some great coaches like Joe Postol. You got some good people out there, even Belton, that they have a background in other things as well. And so they're now sprinkling their stuff as well. And that's what I'm saying. It's that evolution. You're seeing a lot of FMA practitioners getting more and more and more involved. And as we go on, like the future generations now, they're going to be access. They have access to things. A lot of FMA practitioners who were great at what they did, they're going to have a whole new side of the coin that those old guys didn't have.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, just even the basis of being raised in the West provides so much better nuance and opportunity for better training methodologies coming from a sport aspect versus dealing with having to grow up in the streets and have survivability, because that's where the battle tested history and lineage comes from.
Yep.
But if we're looking for purely from creating athletes, creating combat sports athletes, because FMA practitioners can be combat sports athletes, because a lot of them are, being raised in the West, having the Western approach to athletics and training and just life in general, it's going to elevate the standard. Because when you're not having to worry about starving, but you're learning, but you can focus so much on the fighting, it's going to create a whole different genre and different level of practitioner.
I just want to address what Renee wrote there. I'll tell you something right now. I'm not as fast as I used to be, but I'm a hell of a lot more effective on what I do know. And as you get older, you're going to drop shit and you're going to learn how to refine shit. And you're not going to fight. You're not going to fight as wasteful. You're going to be more. You're going to be more conservative and know when to throw that energy. Yeah, no, I'm not taking away about the old guys. There's a lot of old guys out there. I'd rather fight some of the younger guys than some of the older guys. Believe me.
Yeah, the younger guys are less ruthless. They're very spastic and quick to the finish. The old guys, they're just ruthless. I mean, it's
not just that. I think we're just born in a different we're just born at a different time.
Yeah,
I think people now are soft as shit. Really and truly, I believe I do. I know people have said it before, but you know what? I'm going to add to that long list. I really do. I don't think like a kid who grew up in the early 90s is the same as a kid who grew up in the 2015. Not that there's not some tough kids out there, but it was a rougher playground. You got to survive more shit. You seen some shit. You had a little bit more grit, I think, because you had to. And
we were allowed to fight back in the 90s on the playground.
Brother, we had everything. We got to fight, go out, no phone, no nothing. You know how many times I go ride my bike, I fucking almost kill myself, and I'm like sitting there and knocked out, and then I get up and walk my broken bike home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these young kids don't have that. They can't be far, and neighborhood kids would just walk up and punch you in the mouth if you talk too slick, Now you got to skate for them. You know what I mean? I'm offended. It's crazy, but like, but the thing is like same thing, right? With the martial art, like we're in that phase right now with the martial art. We're in that weak phase because we're in a weak phase, but it's a weak in the sense of like people don't have to use it to like defend their families and shit like that. But at the same time, because we have this peace, we have time to really like explore the art. So it's a good thing too. But I'm telling you, the way things are going right now, the writing on the wall, shit's getting crazier. The election in the States, who knows what's going to happen if the wrong person wins or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like times will get tough. When you stop seeing trucks go to your grocery store and stocking it up, if you don't have a firearm to protect yourself, well, then a stick might help or a hammer might help or a blade might help. You know what I mean? But now it's too late to go and learn. You know what I mean? And that's what these skills are for in these times. You should know how to make a fire. You should know how to build a shelter. You should know how to swing a stick or swing. You know what I mean? These are essential skills. And when people are not in war or not in times of need of these skills, that's when these people complain about whose is better and whose is not, and what's the right angle, what's not the right angle. At the end of the day, none of that shit matters because when push comes to shove, then we're going to see what's really what.
Yeah. Fighting figures out so much stuff in general because it eliminates a lot of bullshit. It just does. There's a lot of clarity of like this understanding of like what I can do and what I can't do, and therefore what I'm willing to do and what not willing to do. It's a simple life.
That's why Muay Thai, boxing, and jiu-jitsu are so predominant in people's like wanting to learn it because it's very clear and decisive of who's better, what's better, right? They're like the self-defense martial arts or like FMA and stuff like that. You can't really stab people. You can't really smash people in the head without a stick. Well, that's the closest thing is with like the Dog Brothers, and I think that's what we're trying to do, right? Or the Psyop guys, right? Because if you didn't have that, imagine what FMA would be right now if those guys never showed up on the scene and did that shit.
And again, I keep going back to it runs the risk of becoming obscure and lost.
The Dog Brothers are the Gracies of FMA.
100%. I totally agree with that. And I'm very grateful for what they do and what they continue to do, because the fact is, FMA runs the real risk within a generation of becoming obscure and becoming a meme. Because
I don't know.
People know who they are. Yeah.
I think right now FMA is like growing. It's getting more mainstream now, but with that risk, right? Is it become mainstream and like you see it in schools all over the place? But now like the skill level and the truth goes like the shit, right? There's that danger of it too, right?
Yeah. Totally agree there. I don't know. And this is where, again, having conversations like this and like having the opportunity to address the rhetoric and actually adjust stuff is really important. Did I lose you? No, I didn't lose you.
No, I'm here.
Yeah, because conversations like this are really important. And conversations that people are having in this space versus like the small club conversations is only limited to the club. There's only that little bit of growth. But here in general, where we can have an open forum discussion about stuff like this and have that connectivity, I think that's actually part of the change of what FMA can be moving forward. Is we're having a lot of people who have a lot of experience, combat and combat sports experience, being able to share their insights versus how it was before the internet, when it was just like the little stories around the dinner table and around the fireside, and it was limited at scale. Here we have such a wide variety of opportunities for the knowledge and the wisdom to get out there. Caveat to that is how much people are actually putting work on the mat. Because we can talk about a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of people not putting the work in. So,
well, I mean, guys like yourself, guys like Dean, anybody out there in FMA who's doing the podcast, it's an important thing because you need a voice, right? You have a voice. Like if you're looking for, if I was looking to getting into martial arts, right, and I didn't know what FMA was. Okay, what's FMA? I'm gonna start going down this rabbit hole. We had to actually go out and like take a bus or ride a bike and like go experience that shit. And like now it's like I can sit at home and like what does Kali Estrusimo look like? Type it in. What does Balintuak look like? Type it in. It can give me so much information before I get in the door. But what it does do is like it stops the dojo cult fucking Kool-Aid shit, because now we have access to cross-reference. We can see, right? And we can see. And wouldn't that be a cool thing if you had a promotion of like a fight card, if you will? Lintawak versus Pikiti versus Kali Tudo versus KI. And do it like the UFC, and let's see which arts, techniques, even if you don't win, but you're going to see what they bring to the table and what works. And then what you start getting like a mixed FMA.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Right?
I think
that'd be crazy.
That would be awesome. And I can hear the little like chismusas in my head about like people saying this and the other, but the fact of the matter is it would still just be awesome just to see that happen.
And here's the beauty part about it. I am part of no FMA faction. I am part of no FMA. Like I do FMA because I love it, because I love stick fighting. I love that stuff. But like realistically, I have no lineage. I can say whatever I want about it because I don't have a hat in the circle. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think that's a good thing too.
Agreed. Yep. Renee is right, because in the end, all systems will look the same, because fighting is still fighting. Right. Good fighting.
100%. And that's what's happened with MMA over time, right? Yep. Now it's just a mixed martial art, but you will still see certain flavors. Right? Like look at like for example, you got a guy like Randy Couture, right? By the time Randy Couture came in, mixed martial arts already had a good mix of people were starting to get well-rounded. But Randy Couture ended in the dirty clinch from his Greco, right? Boom. That changed shit. That changed the cage work, right? Then you got a guy like another distinct guy would be what? Like Loyola Machida, right? When he first popped on the scene, he had that very crash in straight line karate blitz, right? That people it was like a mystery until they figured him out, and then he got knocked out, and then he wasn't the same puzzle anymore. But even though he was fighting mixed martial arts, he still had, you could really see that karate flavor, right? Same thing with with Thompson. Same thing with, like, everybody's gonna have that, like, distinct flavor they bring. It'll end up looking like fighting once they're fighting, but there'll be flashes of flavor, flashes, and I think that's where sometimes people want it to be more. I want it to look a lot like Balintawak, or I want it to look. The realism is it's not. It's just going to look like fighting, but you'll still see those accents there, and that's enough.
Yep, having that uniqueness is actually, and that's where the art can be there. So, we've been going. Agreed. We've been going at this for an hour and a half. It is a Saturday night and late. I appreciate you spending your time and sharing so much knowledge and wisdom with me and with our audience. I would love to have you on later. I know we're going to have you on the Fight House Talks podcast later on here in the fall. Brian and I were talking about it and getting coordinated with you. So we'll make that happen. But yeah, I appreciate everything that you do in this conversation, Mark. I really do. Do you have anything you want to promote here at the end as we are getting off? I mean, I'll throw your banners up here and everything.
I mean, I have some online content out there, but like the FU Stick Fighting 1 and 2 that I really collaborate with Paulo. But I do have plans to collaborate with Renee on a seminar. I want to be sharing some of the stick grappling stuff, and Renee's going to be sharing some great material and like nasty shit as always, because I love his material. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And if I could say anything, it'd just be like, don't forget the culture, don't forget your tradition, but don't be closed-minded, and try to think about making it better than when you came into it. Like, research other arts, research other training formats, and try to incorporate their ways of doing things and pull that and extract that, whether it's building attribute or like different strategies. Just make your FMA experience your own, but respect tradition. I think if people just do that, I think it'll be a lot better.
100% agree, and what a great way to end this. I want to say again, thank you everybody for hanging out here, and yeah, have a wonderful night. And I'm going to drop you down, and we'll do our outro here.